welcome to Imperial Interlude, episode 27. This week we discuss the Book of Boba Mando? Question mark? Well,
The Mandalorian
spoilers
season
ahead.
2.5.
Many spoilers ahead, potentially huge, giant-ass spoilers ahead.
Yes.
And so this is by name the Book of Boba Fett, episode 5, for all intents and purposes. The contents is really what could have been the first episode of the next season of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And I
Definitely, I think so.
In a way, it'll be.
Well, hello everybody, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Rolf is also here. Sorry.
It's all right. I think, looking at it and looking at the summary, we could probably... There were some big things in there that I think leads to season 3 of the Mando, and I think this episode of us talking may just be a speculation about what we might see in season 3, because it was a pretty straightforward. Let us see what Mando's been up to, because that was what the introduction was. Really, it was the episode's called The Return of the Mandalorian. It was hinted last week in Book of Boba that he was going to come because of the music cue. We're not.
Yeah. So at least
stupid.
We were aware that he was thinking about hiring him.
Yeah.
But that was only a mere hint of the Mandalorian will come, but in what shape or form wasn't to be expected. At least not to this degree.
Very true. And I mean, before we even start, we need to do a big shout out to Bryce Dallas Howard again for killing it with the direction. I think every single episode she's directed has been insanely brilliant.
Yeah,
really. I mean, she introduced us to Cara Dune, because that was her first episode, and I think she was getting her feet wet. So the episode's good, but wasn't up to the way that she introduced, say, Bo-Katan in episode 3 of season 2 of the Mando, and then she returns back to Mando and reintroduces characters, which we'll get to, and things like that. And it's like, okay, right, just give her a movie.
Yeah, but I guess with her first steps in the Star Wars universe, if I remember correctly, the backstage videos they made, she was more than just a little bit nervous.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, her she is sort of directing royalty, isn't her? Because her father's Ron Howard, as we know, famous director, directed Solo. But,
and all of a sudden, she's amidst Star Wars history and going,
yes, she met George Lucas. She knows George. She met Akira Kurosawa when they were out in Japan at one point. It's like, well, yeah, But anyway, I mean, the beginning of the episode sort of laid the foundation, didn't it? Where we see Din, how to make an entrance.
How not to use the Darksaber?
Well, that's an interesting talking thing, because that later on, and we'll get to this. So we'll sort of speed through this. So we saw Din basically go after a bounty. He had the spear, he had the Darksaber. He did the whole line that we saw in the first episode of Mando, which was, I'll either bring you in cold or bring you in warm, or warm and cold, whichever way it is. And then basically when they went no, he basically unsheathed the Darksaber and went the bride on their asses, from Kill Bill.
Yeah, he actually really chopped them up like sushi parts
and hurt himself in the process, which I thought was a nice touch. And that harkens back to some previous sort of not Mandalorian or lore per se, or well, not so much lore, but it harkens back to some deep cuts to do with lightsabers, and also to a couple of things that happened in Rebels, which we'll get to about the Darksaber. But yeah, he takes on some Klatooinians and basically butchers them all and takes the head of the one that he was hunting.
Yeah, and when he's getting out of all this is happening in something that's a butcher's back end, if you want to say it that way. And when he gets out, there's the former employees standing there, not really sure should they let him pass or just chop him up. And he just goes, well, there's a lot of money on the table in the room behind me. I have no right to it. Feel
Yep.
free to take what you think your boss owes you. He is not
Hmm.
with you anymore.
Yep.
And
And
then
then
greed takes over and he limps away.
yeah, greed over other things, and then he goes to claim his reward from, and I'm assuming a nightclub owner, which was an Ishii tape as well. The
Mhm.
races, it was an Ishii tape, which was interesting to see. I think, is that the first time we've seen the Ishii tape?
No, I think they
I
have
meant
been.
in live action, not in
I think
anything
they've
else.
put one in the re-release of the original trilogy
Right.
in
Oh,
the cantina
in,
scene.
yes, instead of something else, yeah. So he goes to see the Ishii tape and then asks for some information. When they decide they're not going to give him the information or act all sit, eat, he doesn't want to. He threatens to walk away with the head and get the bounty out and get the information elsewhere, and they give him the head, and so he leaves the head and heads out, and he's given a location of basically an alley to get down to the bottom vents,
Yeah, and
and
at that
then
point he activates some kind of filter in his helmet and
yeah,
sees some graffiti sprayed around certain
hmm
areas.
yeah, it's some the hidden markings, so we get to see some hidden Mando markings, a mythosaur marking and things like that, and then as he goes down the bottom, we encounter the armorer.
Which is quite a surprise. I would have thought she had been killed.
No, I think I made the assumption that they weren't going to kill that character off because I think that character's going to have, and this comes into speculation for season 3. She's going to be in season 3.
Yeah, I guess now that we know she didn't die back
Mm-hmm.
in the gutters, she'll have
No problem. Yeah.
more role to play, especially regarding things she said to the
Yes.
Mandalorian later on.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, and this is me totally speculating. I think she's a Mandalorian. I think she's one of the survivors from the civil war on Mando between the Resistance led by Bo-Katan and Ahsoka and what was nicknamed the Mandalorians. And I think the biggest hint is we've seen it all the way through, and I know it's a speculation on the web and stuff, is their spiked helmet.
Mm. It's not far from possibilities.
Yeah. So I think, and also with the things that she conversed with Mando about, when talking about the cautionary tale and things, and we'll get to that. It's like, yeah, I think there's some definitely political, well, not so much politics, but it could be political maneuverings by the armor, I think, and
Yeah,
specific reasons. But he encounters the armor. He also encounters Paz Vizsla as well, which was the
the
Mando
chunky
heavy.
boy.
Yeah, the heavy. Um, which I'm wondering who voiced him, who voiced Paul Vizsla, because in the um in the animated series,
Mm-hmm.
Pre Vizsla, who owned who owned the dark saber in the one of the episodes, was voiced by Jon Favreau.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if it's Jon Favreau again, because it was Jon Favreau's episode Jon Favreau's written all of these. So if anybody has any, what's the word I'm looking for, any complaints about the writing, you need to take it up with Jon Favreau. You know, but Paul Vizsla was uh is or Paz Vizsla as he's called, is a relation, is of the same clan of Clan Vizsla. So I'm wondering if it is Jon Favreau voicing him again.
Should that be in the uh,
I'm not sure because it would be in Mando season episode uh of on IMDb, the Mando episode, because that's when he first spoke, wasn't it?
I think so. Let's just. I'm just looking at their.
Yeah.
What was he called
No,
again?
no, it's not. It's Paz Vizsla and it's someone called Tate Fletcher.
Uncredited.
Yeah, but the actor who's voicing him, or actually that might be the actor who's portraying him as well, is a big, large gentleman who's played a villain in a lot of films and stuff. He was in lots of movies playing like the heavy. playing
Hold on.
Mhm.
Jon Favreau is actually the voice.
Is the voice. So the body is this gentleman called Tate Fletcher, and the voice is Jon Favreau, which is a nice callback to Clone Wars, because that's where John voiced his first character, and that's where he got to know Dave Filoni from, and that's where the foundation of this. Should we call it the Mandoverse?
I can't stop you doing it.
Yeah, because I think that's what it technically is, isn't it? It's the Mandoverse. It's the Filoni-verse,
Yeah, it's the Mandoverse, but not in regards to just being the Mandalorian,
Yeah,
but the
true.
Mandalorians in itself. So it's basically the modern history of the Mandalorians.
Yeah. So, he meets the Heavy again. He gets healed from his leg wound, and the armorer asks to look at the Darksaber. And I've probably jumped some bits, but she then makes some comments about the blade being and then him and Vizsla start making basically what you would describe as a forge ready for the armorer, and then she basically has doubts over the spear, or dislikes the spear.
Yeah, she says that the metal they're using is only used in defensive modes, never as a weapon. So Beskar should never have been mended as a weapon, just armor.
Yeah, and then
the Mandalorian.
that got me thinking, like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and
because
then
if you think of it this way, if Din wanted to, say for example that there is some machinations going on, and there is a fight breaks out, then how the Darksaber's not going to help him against another Mandalorian, is it? Because Beskar bounces lightsaber blades, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But the spear would have helped him. So has she deprived him of a weapon?
I would say no. Because basically there is no real reason for Mandalorians to fight each other than claim right to the Darksaber. And at that point, I think he would have used the Darksaber anyway. So yeah.
True, but still, it's an interesting one that she's that they've taken that item out of the equation. I know there was story reasons for it, and it's the whole thing of them of the armor wanting to melt it down and use it for something. And then before she does all this, we get she asks about the Darksaber, so we get the history around Clan Kryze and what happened, where Bo-Katan, he asks her about Bo-Katan Kryze, and the armor goes, that's a cautionary tale to do with the Darksaber supposed to be, according to them and according to Mando history, the Darksaber is supposed to be won in combat. Bo-Katan never won it in combat. It was actually given to it, and the Kryze lost their way and lost the Mandalorian homeworld. Now, I think that's interesting that in Clone Wars history, it was Clan Kryze, or was specifically her sister, that was looking for a different way to rule Mandalore and have Mandalore interact with the rest of the universe. Yeah. And it was the Watch, as they're called, or the Death Watch, who are a militaristic sect of Mandalorian culture who want to use the old ways. Bo-Katan was part of that sect before her sister was killed. The Night Owls and everything were part of the Night Watch.
So you think the Forge Master could actually have some beef with Bo-Katan?
Yes, yeah, that's why I think she's a Mandalorian, because in the last season of Clone Wars, as we've seen, it was members of the Watch, or Death Watch, had joined with Maul because they were because Maul had defeated Pre-Vizsla to take the Darksaber. In the first Mandalorian Civil War, where you had Bo-Katan fighting against Maul because Maul had killed her sister, Duchess Satine, and this was a story arc a little bit with Kenobi as well, and there's some history there. The end, the episode is Kenobi was leaving the planet. You got basically a shot of him standing on like a platform as the doors opened, to wearing the red Mandalorian armor of a member of the what became the Mandalorians, as we'll call them. And watching as you had Mandalorians fight Mandalorians. So this was leading into later on the scenes with Ahsoka and Bo-Katan, heading back to Mandalore to free it from Maul. Because Maul had sent out a message to get Anakin, but it was actually Ahsoka that did it. But
yeah.
So you had this civil war that had continued, and it was all basically with the Death Watch, and it was Pre Vizsla who wanted to do that. Wanted to take over the planet, was causing strife, was doing almost terrorist attacks on the planet. Later on, in Rebels, we get Sabine getting the Darksaber, defeating what was called Super Commandos, which was a reference to what they were going to be called by George in Empire, and leading to the arc
Boba
with
Fett.
the Mandalorian, leading to Boba Fett, but leading to the arc in Rebels, dealing with with Sabine and her family, Clan Ren, and Bo-Katan turning up, and Sabine actually Bo-Katan was handed the Darksaber because she is of the line of Kryze, which were the rightful rulers. Her family was in charge of Mandalore. So it's interesting that the armorer sees it. It was Clan Kryze lost their way because Bo-Katan was handed the Darksaber, and then the planet fell. But the planet was going to fall anyway, I think, once Maul was removed, because it would weaken the planet because of the Civil War. And I think the whole thing with Maul being removed and the state of Mandalore as is was probably part of the machinations of Palpatine. I'm speculating. I'm reading between the lines, but I think that leads.
We are not only speculating; we're getting far off from the.
Oh, we are as well. But then that leads into the flashback scene, which is the first time we've ever seen it.
Yeah, and what struck me the most at that scene is I didn't see any stormtroopers, but I see a lot of attack droids.
Yeah, there was, we heard it was mentioned. It was mentioned by Moff Gideon, so I'm assuming Moff Gideon was the one that led the Night of 1,000 Tears. But we saw a bunch of TIE bombers basically destroying the domes and fire bombs, and then we saw a bunch of KX droids, which were K2SO.
The scene hauntingly looked like the intro scene from Terminator.
Yes, I got the Terminator vibes as well, with the droids marching through the rubble, basically shooting at corpses, and you saw a bunch of Mando corpses and stuff, and then of course the armorer mentions that they weren't caught up in the Night of 1,000 Tears because they were on a different planet. They were on Concordia Dawn, I think she said.
Yeah, something wrong with this.
So basically that's where we meet them in Clone Wars anyway. That's where Ahsoka, because Ahsoka finds them first. And this is of course as she's about to melt down the spear and asks what you want made from the spear, and Din goes, I want some armor. I want some armor for a foundling, and we all go, well, we know who he wants armor for.
But the most exciting thing, and that really got me giggly a bit, was when we saw she started melting the spear, and instead of seeing something plate being hammered out, we see little tiny rings.
Little tiny links.
So somebody is getting chainmail Mandalorian armor. And I'm just so excited to see a little Grogu in chainmail armor.
Yes, Grogu in chainmail armor.
Can you imagine? I could.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the internet's going to lose its mind next week if he turns up in it, or if he's in Book of Boba with it, But then after that scene, we get the whole him practicing, which is really interesting. Him practicing with the Darksaber, where the armorer is explaining to him how to fight. Now that is a bit of a deep cut, because that was how, for people who ever read the original West End Games Star Wars RPG. The bit about lightsabers and how it seemed to be heavy for him because he was fighting against the blade and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole section explaining this sort of topic in the old role-playing game, which is quite interesting. But it's also how Sabine was taught. There's an episode where Kanan takes Sabine out into the wilds where their base is to teach her how to use the Darksaber.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly the same where she's fighting the blade. The blade is getting heavy and stuff like that. So it was just an interesting that someone who's not trained in the use of the Force and wields a lightsaber has difficulty doing it. And I think it also harkens to Finn as well, because Finn wasn't trained in the Force, but did have some difficulties with the lightsaber, didn't he, in episode 7? So it's just an interesting callback to all of that sort of thing. And then, of course, as he's training, he wants to go again. He understands, and then, of course, we get, but of course he doesn't. But then, of course, we get Vizsla challenging him because it was his ancestor who actually originally built the Darksaber.
Yeah, and then they do a little fight.
Mm-hmm. What's cool is for the first time we got to see the Mandalorian shields, the circular sort of buckler shield, which was a creation from the animated series, which I thought was quite cool. So
but it didn't help him in the end.
No, it didn't help him in the end, and Din, of course, beats him in, puts the vibro knife that he has, or is it the Darksaber? No, it's the Darksaber to his throat, isn't it? No, is he disarmed? He's disarmed from the Darksaber, isn't it? Because Vizsla knocks it out of his hand and then picks it up.
Takes the Darksaber and tries to kill him, and then Mando gets in his backside and has a vibro dagger to his throat. And at that point, the what's her name again?
The armorer.
The armorer is saying, "Yeah, that's enough. We know who won." And then
she
needs to get the oath from both of them.
Yes.
Have you ever removed your helmet? No, says the chunky boy. Have you ever removed your helmet? Asked the Mandalorian.
Din. Yes, we know.
Doesn't go well.
No, but it's their. It's interesting how they say it is true Mandalorians don't take that off their helmet. It's that old mindset, isn't it, of that sect?
Yeah,
because it is. They are a sect, really. They're.
But we know that since he met Bo-Katan, because she refers to them as a religious cult, I think.
Yes, and because when they said he's a child of the Watch, that refers to the Death Watch, which were from Clone Wars, and they were that, like I said, they were that militant arm of Mandalorian society that broke away from Mandalorian society because they didn't want the way that Clan Kryze was running the planet. So it's interesting, but of course he's got to now, and I think this sets up his quest in season 3.
Yeah,
where they're on about.
That's exactly what I was going to say about.
Yeah.
I don't think we will see. So season 3 of The Mandalorian won't have any big introductory episode. It just will, go from here when he tries to redeem himself as Mandalorian, because he needs to go in a well that is being lost underneath the rubble
it's the water of the mines underneath, basically, Mandalore.
Yes, and that's covered by rubble and dust, so he needs to dig deep and don't try to disturb the Balrog.
Yes, you shall not pass.
Would be fitting.
There's definitely that whole thing with the armor saying you are Mandalorian no longer, which is interesting. It's only in their eyes that he's no longer Mandalorian. In other Mandalorians, in say Bo-Katan's eyes, he's still going to be a Mandalorian. So it's interesting. I think we're going to see that conflict. I think we are going to see members of the Watch fighting against against Bo-Katan. I think there might be another mini civil war or whatever.
Yeah.
I think in season 3, but that's season 3. That's going to be the end of the year. And then of course he picks up his Darksaber, picks up the armor says this replies this way, then departs with Grogu's necklace.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a necklace. It has been a small package he received, but I guess it will
Yes.
be some kind of vest
Oh yeah,
armor.
it's definitely someone.
It will not be something tiny. That will be something protective.
Indeed. And then of course he exits and heads to the spaceport.
Yeah,
And
and at this point, I had the most hysterical laugh when this bloody droid came. Yeah, you can't come aboard with all your weapons, and then
so you get the typical walking armory of dropping weapons around.
Yeah.
You know.
And his threat of I know everything that's in here, don't lose anything, like the droid would care.
True, but then of course he's sitting on the passenger line and heading to where we know where he's going. You know.
Yeah, and he has a little Rodian in front of him.
Yes, yeah. Who looks at him and the mother tells him to leave him alone, and then Din looks at the cloth containing whatever it is that Grogu's got, and the cloth, the way that it was folded, looks like Grogu.
Yeah, I found that hilarious.
In the face, it was like, oh jeez. We're just
Can you make it more
reinforcing.
You know, the thing is, if we're not talking about how he's going to give that to Grogu, next thing we know, there's a different foundling.
True.
And this is all just red herring.
Yes. And then, of course, he lands in Tatooine, of course, because he had to go to Tatooine. And how do we get him to Tatooine? He got a message from Pelai Moto, which is Amy Sandaris's character from
the
Mando
weird
and stuff.
Female mechanic with the droids.
And she's busy fighting Womp Rats with, did you recognize the little droid?
Yeah, it's the BD-1 from Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
However, that thing suddenly makes sense in there. I have no idea, but again, she seems to have a weak spot for weird droids, because later we see another Gonk we haven't seen before.
Yes, there's a Gonk droid. She's still got her pit droids, and she's got it's just called a BD unit. It's not BD-1, but everybody is going to call it BD-1 because that's what it looks like. You know, is it BD-1? No idea. Are they setting up Kyle Kestis turning up?
R2D2 is a R2D2, so this is a BD-1 and may as well be the BD-1 for all we care.
Yeah, and then as she's hunting a Womp Rat, she says it's not there, and then it grabs her by the leg and drags her down. So we get almost the Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it had a bit of a comedic effect.
And then Din shoots it, of course, and then
that's an entrance.
Yes, and then she asks, "Where's your little friend?" And he goes, "He's gone to his own camp." He said, "Damn, we could have made some money off him, petting zoo."
Yeah.
As she's leading him to, because she was the one that sent the message to say that she'd found a replacement for the Razor Crest.
I think she just is very fond of the little guy. I don't think she would actually put him in the petting zoo.
But then, of course, we get the reveal of his new ship.
Oh God, I didn't know how to feel at that moment. I was so torn at that moment when they first revealed it. And she has the husk of a Naboo starfighter for him. And he just goes, "This is junk. Where's the Razor Crest?" I didn't say I've got a Razor Crest. I said I've got a replacement for a Razor Crest.
Indeed. And, and then she runs through it saying, which was interesting, that these were commissioned by the Naboo these were commissioned for the Naboo Royal Guard by the Queen herself, which is interesting. And I know people, and I looked on the web about this, were claiming, and I don't know if it's true, but there's supposedly the markings that you could see match exactly the same markings as the one that Anakin used at the Battle of Naboo.
That would be an easy thing to look up, and I wouldn't put it past them that they actually did that.
I seriously wouldn't put them past to do that. So and
Mando what says he doesn't follows want it, so. Is basically a "Yo dog, I hear you like your rims in your rims" episode of Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, Pimp My Starfighter.
Yeah, and
did you notice something though when we were busy putting together, and he pulled out that big long, basically tube.
Yeah, the thing he actually made the Jawas look up, and that is more or less a giant exhaust pipe. It's the same thing we see in the trash compactor scene on the Death Star.
Yes, it's exactly the same thing. But what's interesting as well is they had Pelai speaking Jawa as well.
Yeah,
And we got all this history about Jawa saying they're furry. And all of that is, I dated a Jawa once, they're furry. It was just, just some of the comedic
yeah, and
elements
also
that she put in.
if you looked a little closer at that
Mhm.
episode when the two Javas left, you actually could see bluish fur coming out of
Yes.
their
Yeah.
arms. So they
So we
basically just 25 minutes of them assembling a starfighter with more
indeed.
or less interesting things.
So basically pimping my ride. And
Yeah,
then we cut to the test flight, which was interesting because
yeah. Just to say, people recall how the Naboo starfighter looked. They were very sleek and smooth and very no raised
yellow.
edges, and this one has what I think could be described as a giant V8 sticking out in front.
Yeah, it's got a basically the engine scoop at the front that you would see on a hot rod sitting out the
Yeah,
front of the
it's.
engine. The rest of it looks the same, but what's interesting, there was bits of the wings still missing as well. There was
I,
still, you could still see some of the superstructure and stuff in it.
I don't think they were actually missing. I think most pieces were just highly polished chrome and added. There's
No,
additional.
there's if you look at the front wings itself, yeah, there's a couple of things where they haven't finished the chrome and you can see the superstructure. It looks
Hmm,
a little bit jaggedy and stuff. But yeah, I
me,
mean it's it's an N1, so we know what it looks like. But yeah, there's
yeah, and I think that's more or less just to drive home the hot rod look because
yeah.
they would leave off things like fenders and other stuff.
Oh yeah, there's bits of the engine that you can't see and stuff like that as well, yeah, that you can see into. So when he powers it up, so we get the scene of him turning on the engine and powering it up, we see the exhaust and the engine and stuff.
And also, it's the maiden voyage. There's
Yeah.
always the possibility that these parts are getting added on for the
hmm
next episode, so that they are actually covered and protected.
Maybe, I mean, it's really, it depends what they decide, doesn't it? From a
And I've
design point of
I've
view.
I
The
found it
cut.
very interesting that they removed the droid
Well,
seat and just added a dome on top of it, so they
mhm,
basically have a tiny cockpit.
mm. Well, what's the word we're looking for here? It's probably small enough to fit a small
Child.
child-like character in the
Yeah,
in
anything
the
that's
droids.
the size of an R2 unit should fit in there. So a
Yeah.
Java, an Ewok, child.
A foundling that's going to have chainmail armor, maybe.
I
I mean,
think even a grown up Yoda would fit
oh yeah, yeah.
easily.
So we get the obligatory, let's go and test our super fast fighter
Yeah, and he
around.
does a nice round. And again, there's the Rhodian child looking out the
hmm
window, totally bored, and then he
Well,
just goes zooming by.
what's interesting though is when he was testing down on Tatooine, the footage, well, not so much the footage, but where he was flying through was the old pod racing because it's
Yeah,
exactly the same.
and he went through Beggars Canyon as well.
Yes, yes, went through Beggars Canyon, does a flyby to over basically a civilian ship, and then gets pulled over by the cops.
Yeah, I think the only thing that was missing for the racer scene were some uh,
Sand people.
sand people to fire at him.
Yeah, and also what's her face? The female bounty hunter.
Oh
She
yeah,
was there as well.
yeah.
I can't remember her name now.
So he does a race and scoops
Aura
by
Singh, that's
civilian
it, yeah.
ships and then gets pulled over by two X-wings.
Yes, and one of the pilots we recognize as Carson Teva.
Yeah,
So he must be the one that's in charge because he goes lieutenant. So I'm assuming he's the captain.
yeah. And the nice thing is it's basically the same dialogue we had in The Mandalorian when
Yes.
they had him send us your identification. This is pre-imperial. I don't have any. Oh, I have forgotten
Exactly.
this. This isn't working. And well, you might not possibly be someone who have been around this and there. And then he just pushes the big red button that he got installed and just zooms off.
Yeah, it is indeed. But what's interesting is the other the pilot that was playing the lieutenant,
Mhm.
who's Lieutenant Reed. He's been in the Mandalorian. He was the double for Mark Hamill.
Oh,
He's the one that they mapped. He's the one that did a lot of the body work and stuff, when for the Luke Skywalker reveal in 16. So if you watch the gallery episode specifically on that, he's the one that was there as the, shaven hair sort of changed slightly. So he's the one that they mapped Luke's face onto.
I didn't notice that. I had seen the back, the version of my name.
Yeah.
The
Max
thing you
Lloyd,
just mentioned.
Yeah. The gallery. Yeah.
Gallery,
Max Lloyd Jones is the actor, and yes, he's credited as double for Luke Skywalker. So yes. So yeah, it was interesting to have him, and of course getting Paul Sung-Hung Lee back to play Captain Trevor is always nice,
Yeah, and the very practical approach about how do we now go after him? Do you want to go back to base and fill out reports?
Yes, yeah, that whole thing. Because it's exactly the same, sort of conversation of him going, "Didn't you pilot a Razor Crest? Push the NOS button."
And gone.
And gone. So then when he comes back, he sort of lands and he uses Wizard, which I thought was quite interesting because that's got a bit of history as well. When he goes, when she asks him how was it, and he goes Wizard.
Oh, that escaped me.
Yeah, he goes Wizard, which I think's from it's a deep cut in Star Wars anyway. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, so then Pele tells him that a friend came around looking for him, and
that she had locked her up.
Yes, and then he said, "Did they leave a name?" And we hear from the rafters sort of thing in the high up going, "Yes, Fennec Shan," and of course Fennec turns up, and we then get the whole
happy family reunion.
Happy
she
family
has a job
reunion
for him.
of yes, Fennec going.
He doesn't even take money, which is a poor decision for someone who just bought a starship. But then again,
yes, it's from the Phantom Menace. The term wizard.
Mm.
It's what Anakin says.
Oh, that's why I didn't get it, because
it's also
those are the few movies I did watch in English.
It's also Robot Chicken.
Oh, okay.
There's a reference to wizard in that as well. So it's
I only know wizards.
Yes, type of thing. But we then get Fennec going, it's for Boba, and he throws the money back and goes,
"This one's
on the house. I just need to go and see your little friend."
Yeah, and at that point they cut the episode, and I was furious. They can't cut at that very moment. I wanted to see a Grogu in chainmail armor.
Well, now here's the thing for you: are they going to spend a good chunk of the next episode? Remember, next episode is Dave Filoni's. It's Dave Filoni's episode, right? It's the episode Dave's directing. So, are we going to spend a good chunk of the episode him flying off to meet Grogu, given the armor, and maybe Grogu joining him? Or are we also then maybe going to have more of the episode with more, what you call it, coming in, more assistance? Are we going to get Boba, who's, say, for example, Mando leaves the planet, so Boba leaves to go and, say, find some more allies like, say, Cad Bane, Zuckuss, Forlorn, Bosk, IG-88.
I'm guessing next episode will be something along those lines, but I don't think Boba Fett will leave the planet. He needs to stay and be seen. But I guess there will be people arriving, potentially.
Possibly, but I'm wondering, is this because it's going to be Dave's episode, and a lot of the characters that he introduced Ahsoka, that's one of his creations. Are we then going to get an introduction of, say, Cad Bane? Or could Cad Bane be working with the Pikes?
I don't think Cad Bane would be working with the Pikes.
Because
if I remember correctly, in the Bad Batch, he had a very bad run-in with the Pikes.
He was working for the Kaminoans to get Omega back, and it was Fennec that he ran into.
Oh yes,
wasn't it? Fennec was hired by the Kaminoans as well. So no, the Empire had hired, I think, Cad Bane to get Omega.
Yeah, Fennec was hired by the one Kaminoan that had always been protective of Omega.
Mm-hmm. And
at that
Cad
point,
was the other
Fennec
side,
was still a young, inexperienced bounty hunter.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if we do get Cad Bane, are we going to get that dynamic? There's history there between Fennec and Cad, but also there is an animatic of an unrecorded. There was an episode going to be called, I think, War the Bounty Hunters in season 7, or season 6, when they didn't get season 6. But there's a bunch of animatics, as you've seen on YouTube, of them, like pre-renders, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a duel. The episode is pretty much part of the episode is a duel between Boba, a young Boba, and Cad Bane, and that's how Boba got the head dent. They were actually explaining supposedly how he got the dent in the helmet, and it was from Cad Bane shooting Boba.
Cad Bane being introduced, I think, is a good
it's a long
possibility. And I think, given all the things we just discussed, I think he will actually join the other side potentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a long shot, you know what I mean?
Coming back to your question, I don't think we will see the Mandalorian spending a lot of time searching for Grogu.
Mm-hmm.
I think him now just flying off to see someone will be left as a bridge to the Mandalorian. I'm guessing he'll be just there and having delivered his packet.
I'm wondering whether we don't get him to go and meet Grogu in the next episode. That's just said that's where he's gone off to do, and they'll deal with that same meeting.
Yeah, we won't see it. He'll just arrive at some later point and having delivered his gift for the foundling, and then
or the foundlings with him. Yeah, or Grogu's with him. I don't know.
I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I think Grogu is now. Let's not forget, he's with Luke Skywalker and is training.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he won't leave for a long time.
Now there has been rumors that we are going to get to see Luke in this season of Book of Boba.
Possible, but highly unlikely. If we see Luke again, I think it'll be in the next season of Mandalorian when the Mando goes back to Grogu, and actually it's shown how he's passing on the gift.
Yeah. But what's interesting is if that gift is chainmail, that'll explain how Grogu survived Ben Solo butchering all the Jedi.
Yeah.
Because he's wearing a chainmail shirt, lightsaber, ding, ding, ding.
A bit like a Hobbit we know with his mithril.
Yes.
So I'm calling it. There will be a Rancor monster bit underneath or something resembling a Balrog. I'm calling it somewhere when he tries to get his standing as a true Mandalorian back. There will be some huge ass monster.
There'll be a big ass monster there. Might be a mythosaur
and wings and everything.
A mythosaur. He's going to Mandalore. Why not a mythosaur? But I think as well. Well, I think for the last episode, as we do, it's not episode 6, which is next. I mean, episode 7, the final episode. I think there's 2 things maybe that's going to happen. I think we're going to be maybe, and this leads back to Red Rain, which is the sequel comic to War of the Bounty Hunters. And in that comic is about Crimson Dawn and about Kira. So I'm wondering if that's going to be she may not be in the full episode, maybe like a sting at the very end, like a sting at the very end, that it's actually Kira who was manipulating or leading the Pikes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as also in episode 7, we're going to get, we'll get the fight, we'll get the war, but I think we'll get Boba riding a Rancor.
Yeah, and I think we will not see a finale. We will have a cliffhanger.
Well, I think we'll get an end to the arc, but I think we might get a Moff Gideon style ending.
Yeah.
With that sting of Moff Gideon climbing out the TIE fighter and then igniting the Darksaber. I think we might get something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. I don't think they will actually close up story for Boba Fett at that point.
because I don't know whether it is getting a second season. It was said it might get a second, but I don't know. Because it was supposed to be a limited series, but like what Kenobi is. Well, we know Kenobi's going to end on one episode.
Yeah, but Kenobi, as I said before, is has the disadvantage of being a series wedged in between movies, so we know where he's going and where he's ending. So there isn't much room to expand stories indefinitely.
True. It is, because it's limited, isn't it? It's limited in the where it's sort of sits in its timeline, isn't it? And bringing in supposedly characters in there. There's we know, or what's been said about Kenobi is that supposedly Temuera Morrison's been filming some stuff in there, so we can assume maybe he's playing clones. He's going to be playing, the rumor is Cody might turn up and Rex might turn up.
Yeah, could potentially
Kenobi.
all be.
Supposedly he's going to appear in the Ahsoka show. Is the other rumor that Temuera Morrison's turning up in the Ahsoka show playing old Rex.
Well, I think that would be more fitting.
So it'll be it's
I think if they got clones in the Obi-Wan show, he will voice them, but I don't think he will play them, because let's face it, he's gone a bit soft on the sides.
Yes, yeah, he has.
So he actually could play the
Rex.
Aged Rex and clones, but not the highly slim and skinny ones.
Yes, the new ones. But I've got a suspicion, because this is the Kenobi show is 10 years after episode 3, they won't be clones anyway. They'll be stormtroopers.
Potentially, yes.
It's all stormtroopers, really, not clones. So
yeah, but there could be some clones that are already in hiding.
But yeah, true. Rex is in hiding, isn't he? And Gregor and
a handful of others, I guess.
Yeah, and a handful of others. Yeah, definitely. The Bad Batch are probably in hiding.
So on a scale from The Hobbit, the movie, to extended version of Lord of the Rings, where would you put this episode?
I mean, it really was a good. It's probably, and a lot of people have said this, and I agree with it in some respect, that it was an excellent episode of Star. It was an excellent episode of Star Wars. I think the only thing that let it down slightly was no Boba.
Yeah, if you ignore the recap they do at the front, there wasn't literally no sign of Boba Fett.
There was no Boba, and the show's called The Book of Boba Fett. So where was Boba? Granted, they were I think they were using this episode to set up season 3 of Mando, and also how to bring Din into the Book of Boba, because
it's expanded Mandalorian universe.
Yeah, that, because you're going to have that through thread anyway, aren't you? He's probably going to show up in Ahsoka. He's probably going to show up in Rangers, if they ever make Rangers, and whatever else happens after that, because they are going to use this Favreau-verse, Filoni world, whatever they want to call it, as a building block for live action television. So
I actually.
It was a really good episode, though, and I mean, hats off to Bryce Dallas Howard for another excellent episode of being directed by her.
It was a very entertaining 50 minutes, and I've having a hard time imagining doing an episode of Boba Fett which gets the Mandalorian into the Boba Fett series without feeling being shoehorned in, if you're not being very careful. And at that point, I think they were just, we can either go the short, quick, and easy route, and people may be disappointed, or we just take this one episode and make this really a junction box for both series. So I'm guessing this is not only setting up the third season of Mandalorian with, we know where the other of his crib are, but we know how he's got his new ship. We know that everything is tied together and interwoven with another, so there are no loose ends currently.
It was. I mean, it was that, wasn't it? It was the let's take our time And I think that's the same with the whole of the season of the Book of Boba. You know, people have complained it's not Boba Fett. He's taken his helmet off. Well, of course he's going to take his helmet off now because of the fact that the character's older. You know, it's not 1980. It's not 1983 anymore.
Yeah, and
There's no mystique. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of baggage, and the prequels set that up with who Boba's father was, and then who Boba is, and then the animated series did the same. When he turned up in Clone Wars in the Clone Wars episodes, he wore his helmet, but he took his helmet off as well.
yeah, and let's face it, he's not a Mandalorian like they want the religious nut jobs want it to be. And why wouldn't you take off the helmet and look somebody dead in the eye?
So,
especially in your own throne room.
Yeah, so it's just a weird argument that I see from people that these are Star Wars fans that probably don't like it because he is taking his helmet off and there's not enough action. But
I think that's the worst part for most of them. It's not actiony enough, but it's actually, well, it sounds horrible saying that. I think it's a show for old men. It's slow building. It has an interesting story arc, and there's just enough action in every episode to keep it entertaining. And it's not a show that just goes left, right, center, bang, bang, boom, all dead, and you wonder what the fuck just happened.
It's building story. They had to. I think for the first maybe 3 episodes, episode 4 not so much, but I think for those first 3 episodes they had to lay the foundation of the factors: how the hell he got out the Sarlacc, how did he lose his armor, and why is he still stuck on Tatooine.
Yeah,
and we got that.
And why is his the center of how he is, what he is, how did that change? And I think that was shown very well within the story arc of him being with the Sand People.
Yeah, because the
that
fact is
actually did change him. He was their slave, and then he made them feel better, and then he's more or less the reason why they got slaughtered.
But it was also him having a home, I think. Because I think that's what the scenes in Kamino that we got from flashback of him looking out as his father leaving, and him stuck on Kamino watching.
Having a family of sorts, a feeling of belonging somewhere, and I think that's the main reason why he's trying to not force his way into the remnants of what was Jabba's stuff. Yeah. But he's just saying, we treat everyone with respect, and loyalty will be rewarded. So he's going the Godfather route, basically.
Yeah, it's all to do with family. It's all to do with belonging, and I think that's what the message the season is. Yes, there's conflict.
And at some point, he's going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, you'll wake up with a Rancor's head in your bed, or a Bantha head in your bed.
A Bantha head would be much more, or a Tauntaun head for that.
Yeah, Tauntaun.
And they smell bad on the outside.
Yes, they do. And I think on that note, we can probably end there, I think.
Yeah. Dream of decapitated Star Wars animals. That's a nice thing.
But it was a good episode.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
I think it's a 50-50 if we see Grogu, or if that just will be a footnote, and then we will see him in the season 3. But that will be for next week's discussion.
It will indeed.
Yeah. For this week, I thank Rolf for being here and being a well of knowledge and having all tabs at the ready. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will be back again next week. If not, then something happened. Possibly we got blown away by current winds. But that's that then. See ya.